Doping in Professional and International Sports by Victoria Berry, Krista Carlson, Michael Stangram, and Edie Fletcher. Introduction. The world of sport is supposed to be about fair competition with athletes performing at their best on a level playing field. The introduction of doping or the use of performance-enhancing drugs has changed the landscape of sports. One of the biggest issues currently is how international and professional organizations are supposed to react and regulate against doping. International organizations. The International Olympic Committee, IOC, is in charge of regulating the rules for all athletes involved in the international competition, like Olympic qualifying events or in the actual Olympic Games. The history of banning drugs actually goes back to the 1960s. The category of doping methods was introduced in the IOC list after the 1984 Olympic Games. The IOC's biggest issue is in its organizational setup and its lack of complete control over athletes. Countries have differing policies for their athletes, and it makes it difficult to adequately regulate. International organizations continued. A major concern is the lack of trust on the part of the public in terms of the IOC being able to do its job properly. The IOC needs to be open with its regulation of doping by showing the public that they are taking the issue seriously. International organizations continued. The World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, was formed in 1999 after the countries made their point at an IOC conference by changing the way things were done. The WADA updated its World Anti-Doping Code in 2009 to include greater flexibility for athletes in proving their case, an increase in sanctions, incentive to come forward, updated prohibited drug lists, new standards for labs, and therapeutic use exemptions. There is also a new international standard for testing. There needs to be more collaboration between the WADA and the governmental organizations who are still fighting against drugs within their own borders. Showing a united front to athletes will show just how serious the international community is taking the use of performance-enhancing drugs. Track and field. Doping has a negative effect on the international track scene. India's golden runner Madula was stripped of her gold medal in the 100 meters due to testing positive for a banned performance-enhancing drug. At the same competition, not just 24 hours later, Nigerian runner Okan, a finalist in the 110-meter hurdles, also failed a doping test. One of track's most sought-after coaches, Trevor Graham, was under fire after his star American athlete Marion Jones admitted, after lying to a grand jury, that she did in fact take performance-enhancing drugs that were given to her during her competition years by her then-coach Trevor Graham. Doping in track is becoming increasingly more popular amongst its athletes. Doping has hurt track at the international level, but with the help of organizations like the United States Anti-Doping Agency, the use of drugs will diminish. Soccer. FIFA began drug testing in 1970 and continues to do so today. FIFA has many rules in place for in-season drug testing. However, their out-of-season policy is not as tough because the players are rarely out of season. The rules for testing put in place by FIFA have no room for cheating when all the steps are followed correctly and representatives from the teams being tested are present. Soccer continued. FIFA has over 250 specially trained physicians. These physicians will test their country's national team when they are playing a team from another country. As in any sport, it is important to educate players and coaches about performance-enhancing drugs. Weightlifting. Organizations like the World Doping Agency, International Weightlifting Federation, British Weightlifting, UK Anti-Doping, and the United States Anti-Doping Agency will not tolerate the use of banned substance and performance-enhancing drugs and implement and enforce the following rules: probation, stripping of medals, banned from certain competitions, banned from the sport entirely. Weightlifting continued. Bulgaria, a team that was tarnished by a doping scandal when 3 of their athletes tested positive at the 2000 Olympics, were forced to return their gold medals. and were hit again before the 2008 Olympic Games and forced to withdraw its entire team from the Games when 11 of their athletes tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. Greece, the host country for the 2004 Olympic Games, also withdrew their team from the 2008 Games when 11 of their athletes tested positive as well. When it comes to competitions like the Olympics, weightlifting is the second highest dope-ridden sport behind cycling. Professional sports basketball. On September 28, 1983, the NBA and the National Basketball Players Association adopted the first anti-drug policy in professional sports. And under this, all players are subject to random testing. It is also interesting to note that steroids were not added to the list of banned substances until 1999. Punishment for testing positive for the use of banned substances will vary. Clipper player Darius Miles and Orlando Magic star Rashard Lewis, one-time users of performance-enhancing drugs, were suspended for 10 games and were fined by the NBA. Professional sports cycling. In 1985, it was not illegal to inject yourself with extra blood before the race to enhance the number of oxygen-carrying blood cells. This was known as blood doping. Riders feel that they have no choice but to take drugs in order to keep up with the rest of the field who they believe to be taking drugs as well. Drugs are undetectable and the payoff is so great that there is a constant arms race between drug takers and drug testers. Former cyclist and author Michael Shermer uses the Nash equilibrium as his solution to end doping in cycling. This theory states that if no player has anything to gain by unilaterally changing strategies, the game is said to be Nash equilibrium. Professional sports baseball. In 2002, Ken Caminetti, a former player, told Sports Illustrated that half of the players in professional baseball were using steroids. Commissioner Bud Selig agreed to a modest amount of testing as a compromise to the wishes of the players. One of the most well-known moments in baseball where steroids were used was during the home run chase between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. Baseball continued. Selig appointed Senator George Mitchell to investigate which players were using steroids in baseball. The first player to admit his steroid use was Jason Giambi of the New York Yankees. Since that time, many big-name players have also admitted to steroid use, such as Alex Rodriguez. Conclusion. Although several national and international organizations have been in place since the 1960s, doping in professional and international sports is still very prevalent. Some sports, such as cycling, weightlifting, and track and field, have experienced more incidences of failed drug tests than any other sport in the past 50 years. Conclusion continued. Until all the agencies involved in international sports, be it national or international associates, band together and agree on the same set of testing standards, ban drugs, and punishment for failed drug tests, then nothing will change and those athletes will continue to push the envelope. Here in America, the four major professional sports associations, the NFL, NBA, MLB, and MLS, was joined together with lawmakers to develop a strong testing policy and a strong punishment standard for those athletes that failed drug tests, especially the athletes that failed more than one test. The final 3 slides are resources and works cited. Thank you.